When I was around the age of 9, I caught a glimpse of this show that aired at night that showcased people from different walks of life in a jungle. Little did I know at the time that it would be this glimpse that would kickstart my journey into a series I still hold close to my heart, though the size depends on the day you ask me this question, Survivor. Now, my first season that I watched to completion was Pearl Islands, the 7th season of the show. 7th. We're like, 40 seasons in now? Almost 60 in my timeline? Yeah, safe to say, I've been a big fan of this property, but I've never really had the chance to talk about it since my channel focuses on animation, movies, and manga pretty much. However, since this channel is not my job anymore, or dead, I figured now would be the time to discuss this property I've liked since, well, I was a kid. Or at least the very first season of it. I don't want the channel to rot that fast. But why this series particularly, and not other shows? After all, it's just reality TV set in the jungle, or in later series, Fiji Islands. And while that is very much true, what initially drew me in was seeing people from different walks of life either work together, or go against each other in fun, colorful challenges.
Here we go, a storm is approaching!
Then, as I grew older, I appreciated other elements, like the storytelling, the characters/contestants, and the eliminations themselves, to name a few. Hell, as someone who spent their early years with only people of my skin color, it was really fucking cool to see people of different skin color on this show. It's like my world opened up in a sense. That's really fucking great. And yes, I do sound like a total loser right now. You must be new to the channel. In all seriousness though, let's dive in and see if the show's very first season still holds up today. Initially based on the Swedish show Expedition Robinson, or just Robinson nowadays, this show takes 16 contestants from all different walks of life and throws them into Borneo, Malaysia with barely any supplies, where they must survive for 39 days amidst the animals of the island, rough weather and temperatures, and of course, themselves. As every 3 days, one of them is voted off of the island until one is left standing and is declared the winner of the season. It's a simple concept, but it works really well here. It's not just seeing how they survive the wilderness. Plenty of shows and media did that long before this came out. It's also seeing how they come together to outwit, outplay, and outlast their fellow contestants, which I think is part of the reason the show is still going to this day. And there are many ways the cast members do this. Some laze around, some bark orders like they're the boss of a company, and others form an alliance. The latter of which ends up becoming the most effective means as all the members of the Tagi 4, the very first alliance in Survivor, make it to the final 4, after picking off everyone from the opposing tribe first, defined nowadays as a pagonging, and funnily enough, some of the people on the show weren't even mad at being picked off by an alliance. Some of them were just mad they didn't do it too, like with Jervis's last words. That being said, on the topic of pagonging, that leads to a problem I noticed on my rewatch. For the first half of this game, prior to the merger, it got pretty repetitive on who ended up being safe, as it was Pagong first, then Tagi, lather, rinse, repeat until merge, and even the merge got repetitive, as it was just basically watching a Pagong member go by every episode until all of them were out, and then it was just a matter of watching Sean go by, and then we just had the finale. Sure, it was an effective way to establish how strong the alliance would be in the game, but as a viewer, it got repetitive really fast. Sure, there was the barbecue alliance that lasted for like 5 minutes, but that amounted to nothing in the end. Fortunately, this was an issue that did end up getting fixed in later seasons, as more alliances got formed, tribe swaps happened that shook up the status quo, and it ended up spicing up the game for the better. On the topic of issues, however, the challenges for this season are pretty simple and short. Granted, some of them can be effective and also good, such as the very first challenge, Quest for Fire, because that one is shot very well, and having them light torches quickly is handled pretty well. The Bug Eating Challenge is also a simple and effective one that works. It's seen as a classic for a reason by not only fans of the series, but also those who created parodies/inspirations of Survivor, like Total Drama Island, or that Pokemon one. I wonder who contributed to that trend. But other challenges are pretty lackluster, such as Rescue Mission, where they have to use a stretcher to pull one of their teammates out of the forest, or End of the Line, where they have to run through a maze basically. The problem with these two challenges is that they feel more luck-based than anything, as with the former, one team could have a harder time because the forest is more rugged to travel through than the other team, and the latter suffers from too many alternating paths that can also lead to dead ends randomly. Fast Fire is another example of a lackluster challenge, and I'm glad it got downgraded to a tiebreaker challenge in later seasons, because it feels too small to be a reward/immunity challenge in this series. Also, this challenge was just a massive fucking dick to Jarvis because his torch kept going out for no reason at points. Then again, he did make that sexist remark towards women in a previous episode, so hey, maybe that was just nature's way of saying he fucked up for that. Even the final challenge is kind of lackluster, as it's basically just holding onto the immunity idol with barely any change or temptation to let go outside of fruit and water. Two things they have for a majority of the game, mind you. Yeah, I could see why this was shelved after the 8th season. But yeah, much like the problem I mentioned earlier, this issue did get fixed in later seasons, so this can be boiled down to growing pains basically. Not a huge issue, but a noticeable blemish. With that said, there is another blemish I noticed watching through this season again. 3 of the eliminations make no sense in context to the show/episode, which is unfortunate because the other eliminations are great/make sense. So what are the 3? First off, Sonya's elimination. It makes little sense because she only slowed the team down by a tiny bit, and she barely did anything that made her a problem to the tribe. Maybe this issue was due to the fact that the episode's only an hour long and not 2 hours like later seasons would end up doing, but from what I was shown, Sonya barely did anything that warranted her leaving first. But that's just me. The next elimination I took issue with was Joel's. Specifically because, like Sonya, he barely did anything that warranted him leaving prior to the episode he went home in. Then, when the episode where he did go home came out, suddenly he's a chauvinist and a pain in the ass. I'm sorry, where did this come from exactly? This especially is head-tilting considering in the very same episode, Jervis, who was just lazing around for most of the fucking season and couldn't even swim well, mind you, makes a really sexist remark that pisses off the tribe, and yet he stays over Joel? Make this make sense to me. I feel like my brain's rotting. Finally, Colleen's elimination makes a little sense, considering that the Toggy 4 Kellyless edition were saying that Sean would go if Kelly was safe, yet Colleen went home anyways. Where did that come from exactly? It especially makes little sense when you consider that nothing would change outside of swapping Sean and Colleen's eliminations from 5th and 6th to 6th and 5th respectively. Both were not winning the game anyways. Plus, Sean was pretty much throwing the game by this point anyways, and Colleen's chances of winning a challenge were about as likely as me being funny. But I digress. Outside of the ones I mentioned, there's not a whole lot of issues with this season, and even then, most of what I described as issues are pretty much just it being basic, or blemishes. But how are the characters? Well, this is where it shines in fucking spades, and it gets better with later seasons. So for this section, I'm gonna give my thoughts on every contestant by elimination order. Here we go. Sonya. She was okay. Like I said earlier, she didn't really exhibit any traits that warranted her being a threat/detriment to the tribe outside of that one screw-up, so frankly, she could have gone further. BB, God rest his soul, was the hard-ass wannabe leader of the group that became insufferable as the episodes went on, and he basically gave up playing by episode 2, wanting his tribe to oust him the next time they lost. Yeah, unlike another contestant I'll mention later, BB didn't adapt to his tribe or try to fit in with them, and it clearly cost him in the end. Stacy was also a hard-ass to Rudy and was also incredibly lazy. Outside of that, she was just a pain, and frankly, I loved it when in the first episode, Sue pretty much calls out Stacy's ass for bitching about Rudy barking when she hasn't done shit. Needless to say, Sue is base. Ramona was incredibly forgettable. She barely did anything due to her sickness for most of the time she was on, and by the time she got better, it was her elimination episode, so she was effectively wasted. Even the bio part of her job title didn't want to be a part of this, as it floats away from her description after the first episode. Dirk. He's religious, and also got into conflicts with Rich because he's gay. Pretty sure God views sloth as a sin, yet Dirk had no issue being that on his season. Outside of that, yeah, he deserved the boot because he was useless. Much like the deity he prays to. Did you forget heat doesn't work on me, you stupid, useless shit? Joel. Like I said earlier, this guy barely did anything, and so I have not much to say on this character. Gretchen. Liked her well enough, but good lord, she was stubborn about making an alliance, and frankly, it would have made the merge portion of the game more interesting if she did team up with some members of Bagong to rival Toggy's alliance. Greg is a ray of sunshine who is entertaining in almost every scene he's in, and was very likable from start to finish, and frankly, it sucked to see him go. But hey, it was nice to see him on the jury, and his jury question at the end of the season? Really good shit.
A number between 1 and 10.
Underline?
Jenna. Only memorable thing about her was her not getting a tape from her family. Remind me again why she got invited for All-Stars? Jarvis. Started off fine enough, but he started to get very annoying as the season went on, and his remark regarding women as the stupidest thing on the planet next to cows was fucking cringe, to put it nicely. Then again, his blood versus water performance also sucked ass, and nice to see things never change with this guy. Colleen was also pretty likable, and I do give her credit for being the last Bagong member standing, but though she never wanted to return for later seasons. Sean.
This guy's throwing, dude!
Legit though, outside of the alphabet strategy, and even that gets abandoned after a bit, the only thing he really does is make the Super Pole 2000, which couldn't even catch one fish. This guy was flat out useless and got way too much screen time for someone who barely contributed to the overall game. Sue. I really liked Sue in this. She doesn't take anybody's shit as showcased with her calling out Stacy's stupidity. She had a good social game and chemistry with the Tagi 4, which she was frankly a riot this season. And of course, it'd be wrong of me if I ignored the snakes and rats speech in the final tribal council. Such a good speech that symbolizes the final two contestants very well in terms of how they played their game. Richard the arrogant snake, and Kelly the two-faced rat. And it also does a good job as a plea to the jury to vote how nature itself dictates, for the snake to eat the rat. Which almost went the other way if Kelly answered with an 8, 9, or 10, considering the winner was separated by 1 vote this season. But yeah, Sue was really good. Now on to Rudy, who's complicated to talk about. On the one hand, he's a homophobic curmudgeon. But on the other hand, he tells it like it is, was willing to adapt and change to get by in the game, / in with his tribe, as shown with him initially being against joining the Alliance, but later joining up as time went on, and he's someone that can be trusted. Hell, his dynamic with Richard Hatch was one of the best of the season, despite the two coming from different worlds, basically, and despite Richard being gay and Rudy not liking the gays, so you'd think those two wouldn't get along, but they really did. Yes, comments he made haven't aged well at all, especially in modern day, but he did start to adapt and change in terms of his gameplay and social game as the season went on. In the end, it's complicated for me to say that I liked or disliked Rudy, but that doesn't mean he didn't leave any impact on me while watching, because he absolutely did. Both the positive and negative one. Godspeed, Rudy. Complicated curmudgeon. Finally, that leaves the final two. Kelly was a fine enough player. I liked the heel-face turn she basically did later on in the series, and she was really good in challenges. The problem is that her social game, especially in the final tribal council, sucked. However, she was still a good opponent for Richard to face off against. Not sure if I'd call her winner material though, but I guess that's an argument for the comment section. That leaves me with the winner, Richard Hatch. He's arrogant, pompous, a massive pain in the ass, but he was a love-to-hate pain in the ass, honestly. Having some of the best gameplay / strategic moves of the season, being responsible for effectively birthing the powerful Tagi 4 Alliance, he was basically entering as a chess master, while everyone else was basically playing checkers. Richard was great. Now, if only he paid his taxes, and didn't do, frankly, most of the things he did in All-Stars. But yeah, the cast was overall pretty good for the most part, and that's one of the big reasons I keep coming back to the show, even during the weak moments in the show's history. If you got a good cast of characters from different walks of life trying to work together while also trying to win a game and also change, you got my fucking interest. Speaking of interest though, holy shit, the soundtrack of Borneo fucking slaps! Whether it be the Tribal Council music, the rites of passage music that plays when the final three remember their fallen comrades, an aspect that I really miss in the newer seasons, by the way, but I digress. The challenge music or the theme song itself, ancient voices, it's really damn good. Once that tribal chant hits, capped off with the yo, I'm fucking singing that shit, and getting called cringe while doing it, but that's not new for me, so yeah, I don't care. That shit is bombing. Sure, the initial season of Survivor doesn't have a lot of the crazy shit seen in the modern seasons, like Hidden Immunity Idols, Redemption Island, or its Great Value version Edge of Extinction, or uber deep alliances, or blindsides every other episode, but it's still a really good show from start to finish, and I had a lot of fun rewatching this piece of my childhood again.
No, I'm homosexual.
Never mind, better make a bunch of videos calling the show woke pandering garbage, it's gonna die off. Yeah, wanna find out how to spot fake fans of Survivor? They make videos like this. Bonus points if they never made videos on Survivor prior to 41 and 42 coming out, and are acting offended for clicks while also censoring themselves because they need to earn their 2 nickels from Big Daddy YouTube.
And that's the wokeness of Survivor.
Shut up, bitch!
Sorry, not sorry. And now that I've burned enough bridges today, I will take my leave. Survivor Winners at War felt like the end of an era for Survivor. They brought back nearly half of the winners to compete for $2 million, and for some, this would be their last time competing on the show. Several contestants felt like they had their stories / journeys wrapped up here, like Tony and Sarah / Lucina, and the challenges were at their peak. While Survivor would certainly continue after this, it was hard to tell which direction it would go after such a monumental season like Winners at War. But after the first virus chilled a tiny bit before flaring up again, and then we had to deal with the Renesmee virus in my reality, filming on 41 and 42 had begun, and in record time, as 42 began filming only 9 days after 41's filming had concluded, much faster than the 2 or 3 weeks apart for the back-to-back seasons. So, some of you may be wondering, why am I covering this? Especially after only covering Borneo on the channel and not talking about the seasons in between. Well, I do have some potential motivation to cover these eventually. However, I wanted to cover these two seasons in particular because both seasons got a lot of heat online for its changes and its wokeness, and I wanted to see if these complaints were valid and or hurt the show I grew up with. Spoiler alert, it didn't, but we'll get to that. Also, thank you everyone who voted on the poll I put up on the community tab a while back. I really do appreciate it. And yeah, I hope you enjoy the video. These two seasons take 18 brand new contestants to Fiji where they must outwit, outplay, and outlast each other for 26 days instead of 39, due to the mandatory 14-day quarantine taking up production time. Like Borneo, the concept of putting people from different walks of life into a jungle and having to work together / compete is an interesting one, and it's still interesting after all these years. Unlike Borneo, however, the contestants are more eager to form alliances, and as such, the eliminations and team victories feel less predictable as a result, making for really interesting blindsides, such as Hai's, Sean's, and especially Omar's eliminations, as I didn't expect them to go home in that particular round, and their blindsides were handled really fucking well, which may seem redundant, but sometimes blindsides can be executed poorly / make little sense.
Tyson.
Sorry, Ty.
Another difference from Borneo is that there wasn't any elimination that didn't make sense to me this time around. While I was certainly surprised by the blindsides of the three I mentioned earlier, it also made sense because they were seen as a threat / winner material to the other contestants. So yeah, another thing I'm glad to see improved from Survivor's humble beginnings. Also helps that there wasn't a fucking pagonging in either season. Seriously, that shit was annoying. Challenges were also really good this time around. Sure, pretty much all of them are recurring challenges like Bonus Track and Kenny Loggins, but that has been a common thing for a lot of the seasons as of late, which can certainly be an issue for some, but I don't really mind it because the challenges that they did end up reusing are good challenges. Hell, they even brought back a challenge like Rock and Roll, now rebranded as Keep Digging, which hadn't been seen since Gabon. However, I can understand the complaints about them reusing the older challenges instead of making new ones. I'm just not one of them. I think the ones they do reuse are either freshened up to not feel stale, or are just genuinely fun to watch. But that's just me, obviously. However, there is an issue I have with the seasons, and they detract from the show's overall quality. The new advantages fucking suck. Now for the record, I'm not talking about the pre-merge immunity idols that can only be activated by having all 3 idol holders utter a phrase. Sure, that's a bit dumb, but I do appreciate the effort the holders had to put in to make the speech convincing enough to not make their fellow contestants suspicious, and it also makes them work harder socially to stay in, since until that idol is activated, they lose their vote. To me, that's a really good advantage / change to the formula. I also feel that the amount of advantages were not a big deal here. Say for a couple, but that was an execution, and I will again get to that in a moment. And it felt like a breath of fresh air after seasons like Island of the Idols gave idols and free advantages away like candy. No. My issue with the advantages come twofold. The shot in the dark, and do or die. So, what do these do? Well, shot in the dark costs you your vote for a very slim chance at safety, and do or die basically gives you safety if you pick the right box at tribal. In other words, instead of something that involves skill or effort, it's luck-based. Which I really don't like in terms of Survivor doing it. If I wanted to watch someone compete in something luck-based, I'd watch GSN, not Survivor. Say what you will about the Force Fire Making Challenge in the later seasons, but at least that one still requires skill and knowledge to win it. The problem here is that both of these advantages strip that away for just straight up luck. With Shot in the Dark, it's always a not safe message, and Do or Die was always safe for the person in both seasons, removing any tension as a result. Hell, Shot in the Dark started getting less use as both seasons went on, making the twist come off as more of a waste than useful and or good. There is one other big thing against both seasons. However, I will save that for the end because it is stupid and pounding it into the ground makes for honestly a better finale to me. Until then, let's go over the cast of both in their elimination order. Abraham, incredibly forgettable, and while he was right that Tiffany was about as useful to the team as an appendix, that was all he had going for him. To contrast that, Jackson from 42 was a much better contestant. I liked his story, his personality was endearing, his chemistry with his fellow tribe was touching, and his medevac was sad and also executed well. I wanted to see Jackson go further in the game so that he could win the money for his family. But hey, maybe he'll come back for a later season. That'd be cool. But yeah, I like Jackson. Sarah. Oh, seriously, she was also incredibly forgettable like Abraham, and the closest thing to memorable for her was the move to get Sarah out. A move that Sarah had obviously no involvement with. What a waste. Zach started off on a really bad foot, but he was a genuinely nice guy, and he was one of the few people early on to catch on to Tori's shit, which was great. Outside of that, he was fine enough as a contestant, and like Jackson, I hope he gets another chance in the future. Pache. He existed. Again, he didn't do anything noteworthy, and his elimination felt like, well, that happened. Hell, like Sarah, the only memorable thing about him was the move to get rid of him. Maria. I like that she played in memory of her brother. But yeah, that's all I remember her for, because she was so forgettable and barely did anything outside of that. Brad. I like this guy. He was interesting, liked his chemistry with the others, he was a likable guy, and his blindside was handled really well. I wanted him to go further, honestly, but by this point in time, Sharon and Ricard were taking control of the tribe, so it was inevitable for him to go. Still though, good stuff. Jenny. She was robbed. Flat out robbed of the chance to win. I liked her chemistry and personality. She was a good contestant. It's just unfortunate that Daniel was a spineless shit and flipped on her. Hopefully she'll get another shot in a future season too. JD. I also like this guy. He was entertaining, had great chemistry with the rest of the tribe, he was a ray of sunshine, and it sucked to see him go. Hopefully he'll also get another chance in the future. Swati. Only memorable thing she did was try to blindside Drea, and that was it. Outside of that, she was incredibly forgettable. Jean was another contestant I liked. She was kind, had good chemistry with the other members of her team, was incredibly loyal. She was also a ray of sunshine, and I hope she'll return for a later season also. Daniel. Sydney. Most I remember about her was her throwing a fit over the hourglass twist. Fucking next. Lydia. Liked her bond with Hai and Mike, and I also liked her slowly building confidence. It's just a pity that by this point, Hai had lost his balls and voted her out. Great. Tiffany.
Holy shit, a roommate!
Chanel started off on the wrong foot and continued to stumble into a downward spiral of dumb until her elimination, all because she risked her vote early on in the game. Any of her attempts to get out of that spiral only increased the fall to the bottom. Needless to say, I was not a fan of Chanel as time went on. Nasir was fine. Not bad, not great. He was just alright. Not much of a note with him, unfortunately. Rocksroy was also just fine. I liked his chemistry with the other contestants. He was hardworking, likable, but way too naive for his own good, which cost him in the end, unfortunately. But yeah, he was fine, and I wouldn't mind seeing him again on a later season. Evie. They good. I'm not saying that because they're the first non-binary contestant on the show, though that does help. I liked their moves. Chemistry was good. They were an all-around great competitor in the pre-merge. It's just a shame they got outplayed in the merge. Still though, really good player and another contestant I'd love to see again. Tori was insufferable as time went on, and despite what some may say about the trouble Tori went home in, one of the reasons I liked it was because Tori finally fucked off. Shan. One of the best players in a long time. She made really good moves, she was really smart, her bond with Ricard was great, she had good chemistry, she could have easily won the season if she got to the end. Hell, her elimination was also handled really fucking well, and felt like a good way to send her off of the tribe. So yeah, Shan was really good. I was another contestant I grew to like in the pre-merge. He didn't take anyone's shit, he was likable, smart, had great chemistry, and then he lost his cojones in the merge and took it as ally he tried so hard to protect in the pre-merge. And he didn't even follow through with his plan to take out Romeo in the following vote. That being said, pre-merge High was great. Leona was also great, and I applaud her for making the move to take Xander's idol, even if it backfired in the end. She also seemed to take the elimination well, which is great. Even asking Xander at the final tribal if he had an idol, which was pretty funny. But yeah, she was good. Drea. Another really damn strong player by the end of the game. She had a great social game, great chemistry with the other contestants. She was really close to getting to the end, and only really lost because of another strong player exposing her plans to the others. But yeah, like Drea, and I hope she gets another shot as well. Danny. Another great player, and it sucked to see him go at the final 6 because he was likable, kind, strong, made great bonds. He was a ray of sunshine that could have gone further in the game, and is another contestant I'd love to see return. Omar, the one who got out Drea, really shined in the merge and was another contestant who could have won the season if he made it to the end due to his strong social game and bonds he formed throughout the season. He was also genuinely likable and smart, which was a plus. And another contestant that, yes, I would love to see return because of how much of a strong player he was. Ricard. I initially hated him in the beginning because he was acting like a prick and was involved in one of the controversies I'll mention later, but as time went on, I started to gain a lot of respect for him, his gameplay, and he started to ease up on being a prick and became likable towards the end of his game. So basically a redemption story. Lindsay. I mean, she was a challenge beast. That's about it, because every time she tried to make a move, she fucked it up, like not using the amulet to save Omar, or competing in the do or die twist, or hyper-focusing on taking out Jonathan. Not a big fan, basically. Heather. Who? Seriously, she was super forgettable outside of that fire-making challenge where it came down to seconds. What a shame. Jonathan, much like Lindsay, was a challenge beast and had a slightly stronger social game than Lindsay on top of him being a nice person to be around, but he barely did much in terms of gameplay outside of being a physical threat. Would I like to see him again? No. He was fine enough, but he's not returning material in my eyes. Besides, I'd rather not see him get milked to death like Ozzy did with his returns. Oh boy, if I ever cover those seasons, I'm gonna have a lot to say. Anyway, on to the final 3 of each. Xander was another contestant I liked. He had a good social game, was a ray of sunshine to his fellow contestants. He was also a challenge beast, but his strategic game was weak as fuck, and that was one of the things that cost him in the end. Still though, I liked Xander. Romeo was basically fodder for most of the game.
This guy's throwing, dude!
Sean was likable, but his merge performance was basically an utter disaster where he made impulsive and off-the-cuff moves that hurt his own performance, such as blowing up Erica's game to Heather and participating in the do or die twist, which is a shame because I liked Deshaun well enough in the pre-merge section, but his merge performance sank him as a character, honestly. Mike was also likable, strong-willed, kind. He made great moves and great bonds with his fellow contestants. He was also easily winner material to me. Only thing I took issue with, however, was that he failed to acknowledge his betrayal/cutthroat moves in the final tribal council. If he had brought that level of self-awareness, the vote might have been closer than a near-unanimous decision for Marianne. And finally, that leaves us with our 2 winners, Erica and Marianne. Erica was genuinely surprising to me. I never thought she could win, but looking back on the season again, it started to add up why she won. While everyone else was targeting each other, Erica was controlling the vote in the background while nobody noticed, keeping the target off her, and also allowing her to make some really good moves. That is so fucking sneaky, and I love it. Plus, she had really good social game and was great in challenges. After realizing that, I started to like Erica a lot more. For her to be able to do that and have no one notice until it was too late, that's commendable and great. So, yeah, Erica was a great winner for me. And finally, we have Marianne. Marianne was also really damn great. She had great chemistry with her contestants, her personality is charming and infectious, she made some fantastic moves near the end when she took action, she was an all-around great contestant and ray of sunshine that made the season more enjoyable with her in it. Hell, despite having an idol, she was able to convince Mike at the final 5 to use his idol to save her, and got to flex the unused idol in the final tribal to the jury. That is badass. I love it. So yeah, I liked Marianne this season, and that could be said about a lot of the cast in both 41 and 42. I wasn't just saying this to be repetitive or to fill out the script, I genuinely meant it. That despite the few stinkers, the rest of the cast is really likable, and are contestants I would love to see again in a future season. And considering we're only 2 seasons into this new era, that is a great sign of things to come if they're pulling off strong casts this early. However, it's time to rip the band-aid off, because these 2 seasons had a lot of controversy to them when they first came out. And now, I get to make fun of stupid, so buckle in. First up, change to 26 days. Yeah, it sucks that they did this after 20 years, but considering how the pandemic fucked things up, I can't really blame them for this, and if anything, at least it trims a bit of the fat. Besides, I'm sure people will get over it, like the day when CBS cut out the intro, and the rites of passage, and changed the final 2 to 3, and added the fire-making duel. Next up, the change from come in guys to come on in. Basically, Ricard was the one to bring this up, and people got pissed at him over it. Look, I get it's a staple of the last 20 years. I also liked it. But things change, and this is honestly a nothing burger. When I first saw this, I was like, alright. And then I just got over it. Oh, and by the way, people bitching over nothing is my thing, not yours. Following that, a lot of fans say the show has gone woke. What's made them come to this conclusion? Because the show bothered to address real shit like racism and add LGBT contestants competing because of a quota. If I had a week, I couldn't list all the problems with that argument. First off, them addressing racism has been a thing since at least Marquesas. This is not new, nor has it ever been a new thing with this show. Secondly, while there is now a mandate for CBS programming like Survivor to have 50% of the cast be POC, that doesn't necessarily mean it's done for quota reasons or the like. It's very much possible that this was a problem and they wanted to fix it going forward. However, why does it matter to you if the cast is at least 50% POC? They're a person at the end of the day, and yeah, it'd be nice to watch a show without having to worry about racial bias and the like, I get that. But that's not the world that we live in, and humans are prejudicial pieces of shit at points. So them at least attempting to even the playing field isn't a bad idea, and it certainly isn't woke of them to do it. And before anyone says, oh, but racism has died down so it isn't as serious anymore, 8 minutes, 46 seconds. Anyways, what else is there now that I pissed off those people? Oh, alright. People bitched about the idea of an all-black alliance. Okay, on the one hand, it would be nice to see multiple races in one alliance working together for equality. Wait, what's that? Those have existed for a long time in this series?
Fascinating.
In that case, this controversy is fucking stupid. Who gives a fuck if an all-white alliance or an all-black alliance exists? No one cared when it was under an all-white alliance or a one-sex-only alliance. Why does it matter here? Besides, we have alliances where people of different races work together anyways, so what's the harm if in, say, 41, they wanted to form an alliance of African Americans? Spoiler alert, none! Put simply, most of these controversies involving both seasons can be boiled down to nothing burgers with who gives a fuck fries. Alright, now that I got that out of my system, let's wrap this up. Overall, Survivor 41 and 42 are good seasons. While 41 has a slightly weaker cast, it's still a lot of fun to watch, and is a series I would rewatch over seasons like Redemption Island, One World, or even Island of the Idols. Meanwhile, 42 has a stronger cast, good challenges and blindsides, making for an overall great experience to watch, despite the do-or-die / shot in the dark muddying the quality of both a bit. Sure, these seasons are an all-time greats, but they are still good seasons to me, and I highly recommend it.